Chefs, you are tuned into our live training this morning. All right. We're going to be dropping some fire in this one. Today is all about creating routines that develop keystone habits and lead you towards success. And something that I feel that a lot of people have it's a bit like Marmite, right? Lockdown's a bit like Marmite. People have either gone one of two ways. They either love it and have embraced the routine and have taken to it and have created structure for themselves and created day-to-day consistency through routine and building habits. And then you've got people who've gone the other way, which is you've gone to the negativity. You've gone into self-defeatist attitude. You've gone into a mentality where nothing works for me and I'm stuck and I'm not motivated. You've gone one or two ways. Today is about clarifying, right? It's about clarifying the practical steps to addressing that. It's about clarifying the practical steps to addressing it. Good to see a couple of people jumping on live. Let's share over the iPad and let's get down to business. So first and foremost, get the iPad up here and we'll get going. Why are we doing this? Why are we talking about routine? Why are we talking about habits? Why are we talking about finding success? Well, really what it's about is I see a pattern. And this is all human beings, but I've seen a pattern in this group of inconsistency. Now, whether I can spell that correctly is another question. Inconsistent, okay? Some weeks you do it, some weeks you don't. Some weeks you're winning, some weeks you're losing. Some weeks you put on weight, some weeks you lose weight. Some weeks you do a 3 and 3, some weeks you fucking do a 1 and a 2. And I'm not talking about a piss or a shit here, pal. Inconsistency. That's the first reason why we're talking about this today. We want to rectify the inconsistency. So obviously you can become consistent. Why are people feeling inconsistent? Why are people not finding week by week that they're doing the work? There's a couple of reasons. The first one is a defeatist mentality. Defeatist mentality. I can't because, fill in the gap. I can't because I'm in lockdown. I can't because I'm a chef. I can't because I have a kid. I can't because my wife said because she's upset when I do something. I can't because I do not have the time. I can't because I'm just not motivated and I don't have the energy. Fill in the reason. Understand that the reason you're giving is not the reason that you're stuck. The reason that you're stuck is because you have a defeatist mentality. You believe everything to be bad, therefore you get negativity in return. I'll say that again. You believe everything to be bad, so therefore you get negativity in return. People who complain about not having time never seem to have the time. I wonder why. It's because you're not proactive in finding time. Because you're too busy passing your power and giving your power away to the excuse that you're trying to conjure up. Do you understand what I'm trying to say here? When you make excuses and you pass the buck, you're giving away your power. Each one of us has power within us. We have the power to push forward and do the right thing. We have the power to take action. We have the power to keep things proactive and keep things positive. We all have that power. But when you make choices to blame instead of take responsibility, ultimately that defeatist mentality is what leads you to be inconsistent, because you need someone to hold your hand to get you back on track. And then as soon as someone stops holding your hand, you fall off track, because the problem is you have not looked within. You have not looked within. You're looking out there. You think it's the job. You think it's the chefing. You think it's lockdown, when it's not. It's you. You make bullshit decisions. Every decision is a battle. Do you understand? This morning, You can wake up at 5:30 and get it done, or you can wake up at 8, 8:30 and do fuck all. But yet you'll still probably blame lockdown for why your results aren't happening. I would blame the fact that you didn't make the right choice. You could get up and you can sit on your couch and you can stick on TV and start flicking on Instagram, or you can get up, you can get your shoes on and you can start doing your yoga, you can start doing your exercise, you can start doing your run. That's up to you. It's totally up to you. Remember, these are all small battles to be fought and won. These are all small battles to be fought and won. So the key thing is stop fucking blaming and using the excuse, because you lose the power to fix the problem in front of you. That's why defeatist mentality is causing you to be inconsistent. Now, as we go forward from there, the things that stem from defeatist mentality, obviously you'll become inconsistent. You feel flat. And you fall off. And when you're inconsistent, you feel flat and you fall off. What's the next step from there? Overwhelm, negativity, and then once you're overwhelmed and you're feeling negative, you quit. That's why we're talking about this today. So when I'm talking about routine, when I'm talking about execution, when I'm talking about keystone habits, you need to take it very seriously. Because when you don't take this stuff seriously and you say, it's grand, you're not catching yourself when you fall. You have no safety net. And ultimately, what it leads to is you end up in this bubble of defeatism. Nothing works for me. My situation's different. Bullshit. Like, when I tell you guys that you have far more power than you give yourself credit, I'm dead serious. You know, I've had times where I felt depressed. I've had times where I felt anxious. And you know what I've realized in those times where I felt depressed and I felt anxious? The problem wasn't the thing that I thought it was. The problem wasn't lockdown. The problem wasn't fucking my job. The problem wasn't the world. The problem was me. I'm making a decision to stay stuck. I'm making a decision to blame. And when I blame and I push the fucking book over to someone else, all of a sudden I feel like a victim. I'm the one who's losing control because I have lost control because I'm giving the power away. So think about what we're doing today and the practical steps that we're going to integrate today. These are the ways to develop power within yourself. These are the ways to develop certainty within yourself. Do you get me? And that is your number one currency. Because really, if I flip this entire thing on its head, this is the definition of red pilling. Do you get me? That's the definition of red pilling. It's a step-by-step process and descent into the depths. Now, as you look at the other side, and what we're trying to do, we, my friends, are trying. We are trying. If you imagine yourself here, right? What you're really trying to do is, by taking action, by having routine, by taking action, by having routine, by executing. And I'm not talking like, okay, well, I did my walk today, you know, great. It's like, it's fucking easy to go for a walk. It's easy to go for a walk. Did you do exactly what was on the plan? Did you wake up early? Did you get after it early? Is your day planned out? Did you execute the morning routine and get it all done? Did you get your food on point? Did you watch your portions? Did you take your food pics? Did you do a live video? This is execution. Execution is not just doing what you're comfortable with. Execution is doing the difficult shit that you might be uncomfortable doing, but you know it's going to get you to your result. All right? That's the first step. So once you're taking action, right? And this is how it works. Once you're taking action and you're using your routines and you're executing to the nth degree, and I don't mean execution as in doing the easy thing that you're comfortable with. I mean execution of doing the shit that you even don't want to do and overcoming those obstacles and overcoming the resistance in your mind. What happens? Certainty. This is a key word that everyone, if you don't understand what this means, you need to focus in on it. Certainty. What does it mean? Certainty is an emotion. It's a state of mind. It's like the Midas touch. You ever hear that thing about the Midas touch? King Midas, everything he touched turned to gold. Well, really what that means is he was so full of certainty that everything he did just seemed to click. And to remember, I was describing when shit goes wrong and you get in this state of, I'm feeling stuck, I'm not motivated, nothing seems to be working for me right now. The reason that nothing works for you is because you have no certainty. And when you have no certainty, you have no self-belief. And when you have no self-belief, you have no fuel for your actions. So therefore, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy where it's just more negativity, over spiraling, and you keep going, you keep descending into that depth. The key thing that you're looking for is a state of certainty. I'll give you my own example, right? This week, I've really upped my game. I've kicked myself in the arse because I know I was letting my morning routine slip, sleeping in, not fucking getting after it early, taking it easy when I shouldn't have been. All of those things, falling into a state of doing what's comfortable and what I want to do instead of doing what I needed to do. And what I've focused on this week is get back to waking up early. You're up at 5:30. Doesn't matter if it's dark, pissing rain and cold outside, you're up at 5:30. It doesn't matter if your ankle's fucked and you can't run. We have a bike. I'm getting on the bike. I do my 30 minutes in the morning. After that, I follow it up with yoga. I follow it up with reading. I follow it up with planning, and then I train. And all of these things in that process, right? Once I get through all of those things, I've done the hard shit. I've overcome the resistance in my mind. I feel good physically and ultimately mentally. It's not about just feeling good mentally. It's feeling certain. No one is going to fuck with me today. And that's what certainty is about. It's this process of understanding that by taking action and executing, you build a force field around yourself. Whereas when you don't, what happens when you don't execute? Well, all of a sudden you end up in the dead zone. The dead zone is everything's triggering me. I'm so stressed out about life. Work is really shit. I'm uncertain about the future, yada, yada, yada. When you don't execute, that's where you end up. You get overwhelmed. You don't want to be overwhelmed because overwhelm leads to quitting. So remember, when you take action, you have routine, you have execution, you build certainty. If you're able to do this enough, we start to form habits. More specifically, habitual success. So the reason that I'm not just talking about putting a nice little routine together for yourself, the thing is the routine is what leads you towards habits. And our daily actions, roughly about 40 to 50% of our daily actions are habitual. We do them on autopilot. We don't think about them. Do you get me? So your aim and your goal is to make solid execution, disciplined routine, and proactivity when it comes to action. You want to make those things a habit, okay? And when you're full of certainty, you will do it enough times where it does become a habit. So that's what we're looking for. Once we make habitual success, that's where the results happen. Because it's not going to take you 2 weeks. It could take you a year. It could take you 2 years. That's just the truth. True transformation is not just an external physical thing. It's not just I've made physical changes. It's an internal battle that you must fight. And you must fight it for a long enough time until you win. Remember, think about the person that you were when you came into Chef Fit. I can't because of this. I'm depressed. I'm fucked. You know, my life's all over the shop. I'm stuck. My relationship's under pressure. I've no confidence. I've no self-belief. I haven't had sex in 4 fucking months. Like, think about that person. Okay, cool. It's like for you to achieve what you want to achieve, you have to change who that person is. And how you change who that person is action in terms of executing your routine, having it laid out in a way where you're doing it every single day. When you do it every single day, you build certainty. Certainty is the belief in yourself. It's almost like a Midas touch. When you're in this frame of mind of, I'm winning, everything seems to be working, I'm making it happen, I feel good. That feeling of certainty, that means when you have that mindset, that literally manifests into your success going forward. Remember, it's like a self-defeatist person who pities themselves has never built something that made them a millionaire. I can fucking guarantee you that. I'll say that again. A self-defeatist person who pities themselves has never built something that's made them a millionaire, has never built something that's made them uber successful, and has never built something that makes them happy. Do you know why? Because when you've got a self-defeatist mentality and you pity yourself, you give your power away. Whereas when you look within and you say, I'm going to take charge, I'm going to make a fucking decision now to do this and make it happen. And then you use that fuel and you fire it up and you go to your execution of your routines. That's what builds the certainty. And certainty is what develops true success, because you carry that mentality into every action that you take. Remember, every action is a battle. And it's either a battle to cast a vote for the person you want to be or cast a vote for the person you used to be. Do you get me? So when you're certain of yourself, you're going to take the right action for who you want to be. I'm going to do my exercise today because that's going to get me to my goal. As opposed to when you're feeling shit about yourself, oh, I'm not going to do it today because I just don't feel like it. That's you casting a vote for who you used to be. So this is why routine and execution is so important, because it builds the certainty. And the more certainty you have, the easier it is to take action. The less certainty you have, the harder it is to take action. That's what we're after. So the question here, guys, is how do we do this? How do we actually nail this down? What's the practical elements? All right. We got to talk about something. It's called a keystone. So a keystone versus a hex stone. All right, a keystone. What is it? A keystone is a habit, right? It's a habit that all other positive things that happen to you are based upon. It's like imagine building a platform. That's what a keystone habit is. It's a platform. And when you have this platform built, you can stack all this really positive stuff on top of it. So let's break it down like this. It starts with routine. The routine is wake up, as an example, at 5 a.m. The habit that we want to build is exercise early. Now, the routine comes first. If you're not waking up on time and you don't have a specific outline for when you're going to do something and what you're going to do, well, all of a sudden then we're leaving it up to chance. It's not good enough saying I'm going to exercise tomorrow. Because what happens when you've got a lot of things to juggle? What happens when you're back to work? What happens when you've got a family? What happens when you've got responsibility? You don't have all day to fuck around. So what's very, very important is that the routine in this example is wake up at 5 a.m. Why not wake up at 9 a.m.? Because you're leaving yourself 20 minutes to exercise, and then you leave yourself no time, and then you make an excuse, and then you wonder why you're stuck. It's because you're not putting a routine in place, chef. So once we have this wake up at 5 a.m., that is the key to you getting to your next part, which is the habit. And this is the keystone. Because if you could follow the routine of waking up at 5 a.m. and you have your gear laid out beside your bed for when you wake up and you lash it on, all of a sudden, getting yourself in to take action and exercise early becomes a much easier process. Whereas if you don't wake up on time, exercise becomes a much more difficult process. Now let's break this down. Okay, you get up early, you exercise at 5:30. What does that then lead to? That then leads to more energy. That then leads to feeling positive. So when you've got energy and you're feeling positive, okay, cool. What are some of the things that start to happen? We plan our day. We execute. We execute the plan. We feel productive. And we feel like we're winning. And what happens when you plan, execute your plan, you feel productive and you win? What's the word we're talking about? The word that we're talking about is certainty. There's no doubt. There's no room for doubt. You've outworked your doubt. So do you understand what I'm trying to get across to you here, guys? Is that by having a routine and stacking that routine with a keystone habit like exercise, it's a platform for all the other positive feelings and emotions and things that you're looking to get are built upon. That's what it is. That is what it is. Now, in your own mind, you've got to start identifying what your routine is like. Question it. Like, what is your current routine? What time do you wake up? What do you do in the morning? What's your bedtime? What's your routine at night? Because I guarantee you that the majority of people aren't focused on developing a keystone. The majority of people are based on hexstones. And hexstones are the things that destroy you. They ruin you. They stop you getting from where you need to go. So when people talk about I'm my own worst enemy, yeah, it's bullshit. I've got demons. It's bullshit. You've got hexstone habits that control your operating system. You've got ways of operating that you've potentially developed to cope with stress, to cope with trauma, to cope with whatever you're dealing with in your life. And all of a sudden, those coping mechanisms that are very negative, they start to become habitual because your brain doesn't give a shit about what's positive or what's negative. You have to be the one to determine what's positive or negative. So you can take proactivity and build good habits that are positive and work with you. But that has to be a conscious decision from you. Your brain will just put anything on autopilot if you do it enough times. Smoke enough joints, you become addicted to smoking weed. Do enough cocaine, you become a cokehead. Do enough heroin, you become a fucking heroin addict. Drink enough alcohol at night, you become an alcoholic. Smoke enough cigarettes, you become you know what I mean? You become addicted to smoking cigarettes. These are all examples of hexstones. Do you get me? And your brain doesn't care. Your brain's not there going, okay, cool, well, that's good and that's bad. Your brain's just going, okay, cool, well, let's just put this on autopilot. Let's just get them to crave this and do it without thinking. That's all your brain does. It's on you to determine whether the thing you're making your body do and your brain put on autopilot is positive or negative. That comes down to you. Very important to note, guys. So let's move on to hexstones, because we know with the keystone habit that you must start it with a solid routine. You follow up that routine by stacking it with a keystone. And that keystone is what leads to more positivity going forward. Then we move into hexstone. And this is probably the one where you're going to get the most clarity. So what is a hexstone? A hexstone is a habit that is inherently destructive. A habit that is inherently destructive. So I'm going to lay out an example of what this might look like. And what I mean by destructive is it's stifling your efforts. It's like pushing shit forwards or downhill. That's what it's like when you've got keystone habits. When you've got hexstone habits in place, it's pushing shit uphill. It makes everything harder. It makes everything more difficult. You're doing things with more of a burden on your shoulders. I'll give you an example. All right. You go about your day, you finish work, you finish your day, there's stress involved, and then you have a reward system. You use a vice to release. Any one of us has gone through this. For me, my big thing was weed. For some people, it's alcohol. For some people, it's cocaine. Whatever your thing is, everyone's gonna. For some people, it's cigarettes. You got to understand that this is the cycle that you find yourself in on a day-to-day basis. What you're not realizing is how much destruction this is causing. That's what you're not realizing. So like we break it down like this, and I'll actually work from the top down because we're going backwards here. Okay, let's say every single night you come home, you have 2 beers and a joint. All right, you have 2 beers and a joint. Now, my brother's calling me. I'll just cancel this. So you have 2 beers and a joint. Now, what's important to note is that by having the 2 beers and a joint, yes, you have your release. Oh, that's me. Okay, right. I'm winding down. I'm okay now. The stress is relieved. Then what happens? You wake up late. You feel angry because you didn't sleep well, because you stayed up late, you had the drink, you had the joint, you probably ate more food than you wanted to. Physically and mentally, you're in a bad place. Now, when you think about that for a second, what starts to happen? When you're physically and mentally in a bad place, you make excuses. You lash out. Oh, fuck them, Oh, fuck this, lockdown. You get into this place of lashing out at things. You get angry. God knows how many angry chefs who've been in this place that I'm currently describing that have either emailed me or messaged me or left a comment saying, you're this, you're that, fuck you, because I'm literally holding a mirror up and going, bro, this is your life. This is what you're doing. This is why it's not working for you. And they don't want to change that. Or maybe I'm pinpointing a pain point that's very, very real for them or very visceral for them. So they want to lash out. You make excuses, you lash out, you don't exercise. If I can get this, if I can fit it in, you don't exercise. You eat crap. And all of a sudden, what starts to happen is because you're making excuses, because you lash out, because you don't exercise, because you eat crap, this then becomes a cycle. And that cycle repeats because you did it last night and you've had a shit day because you did it. So then you're going to do it again tonight because you need a release from the pain that you're experiencing from being in this cycle. That is the definition of a vicious cycle. You have to understand that about how you operate. So you've got to ask yourself the question, what hexstones do I have right now? That is the most insane way to spell hexstones I think anyone has ever put on paper. What are your hexstones right now, chef? For a lot of us, a lot of it is down to nighttime routine. We all like to release, and I'm not saying, listen, I'll still smoke a joint on the weekend. Do you know what I mean? It's not a massive deal. If I'm having an easy day, I'll have a couple of puffs. It's not the biggest deal in the world. But if I contrast that to how I used to be, I was fully addicted. I had to have it because if I didn't have it, I was a nightmare. Two very, very different things here. So I'm not saying that you can't ever have a drink. I'm not saying you can't ever have a release, but you got to understand that a hex stone is something that controls you. You look forward to the release. You need the release. And unfortunately, that release leads to more negativity because you're waking up compromised. You're waking up angry. You're waking up mentally in a bad mood, in a bad place. You're waking up physically in a bad place. Therefore, you don't want to do the work. You make excuses. You feel even worse about yourself as a result. And then to quell that pain, you do more of the same. And that's how you become totally addicted to an unhealthy cycle. So you got to ask yourself what hex stones right now may be holding you back, and what keystones do you need to start putting in place? Because ultimately it works like this. The way to nailing the keystone is have the routine nailed. Stack that routine with the thing that you want to build a habit out of. You want to get used to exercising regularly, do it every morning. First thing, make it your priority. And the ability to do that comes down to the skill of execution. People think that just because you have a plan that it's going to happen. It's not true. You are the person that determines the outcome and the effectiveness of the routine. That's what execution is. Execution is, can you show up and do the work? Can you show up and do the thing in front of you? Yes or no? A lot of people can't. A lot of people give themselves an easy way out. A lot of people make excuses. A lot of people procrastinate. They put things off. I don't need to plan my day. I already know what's involved in my day. Bullshit. That's why you're unproductive. I can exercise later, and then you go to exercise later and you half-ass it because you're doing it at the end of the day where you're emotionally and physically spent instead of the start of the day when you're ready to rock and you're refreshed. Do you understand me? Those are all down to the skill of execution. And what determines whether you execute or not is how self-disciplined you are. And what I was talking about last night is that self-disciplined, and I've been posting pictures from Discipline Equals Freedom, the book. But self-disciplined, note the word self. Self means you. It has to come from you. No one can, you can't read it in a book. It might make sense what I'm saying to you. Do you know what I mean? It might make sense. But the only thing that determines whether you are going to do it or not is you. You have to look within, you have to dig deep, and you have to make that decision. And if you don't make the decision, it won't happen. Do you get me? So self-discipline is a choice. And it has to be a choice that you consciously make as a human being. Note, self-discipline is nothing external, it's purely internal, and it's on you. And when you do this and you nail it down, it's a domino effect. And that's important to note. It's a domino effect. The more you execute your routines, the more disciplined you are, the more positivity will creep into your life, because taking care of yourself and being disciplined is a positive thing to do. And when you make a habit out of doing positive things, all of a sudden it yields more positivity in your life. Lo and behold, it's an incredible thing. It's momentum. And momentum can work with you when you are proactive, but when you're not proactive, it works against you. And that's something that you have to note. If you're in a shit place right now, yes, there's going to be external factors. And listen, if you've lost somebody or you've lost your job, and I get it, I understand, it's painful, man. It's painful. No one's going to blame you. But if you're stuck in that place, the only thing that's going to get you out of that place is action. If you didn't get results this week and you're disappointed in yourself, you got to take action. You know what I mean? You got to double down on your nutrition. You got to train harder. You got to show up. Nothing's going to make it happen for you. You've got to make that choice. And when you do it, it's a positive domino effect. Remember, it works the opposite way too. So from there, what I want you to start doing from a practical step, and for anyone watching this live, I want you to leave a comment on workplace. Go and comment on workplace. What I want you to state is, number one, what's your big takeaway from this training? What's your big takeaway from this training? What have you learned? What has clicked with you? Has anything gotten into your mind and it's like, shit, I need to do that now? Has something clicked? Let me know, because what's going to happen is you'll watch this, something might click, but you don't note it down, or you don't take an actual physical note of it, and then an hour later you've forgotten about it. So what's your one big takeaway from this? The second thing is, what is the keystone that you need to develop in terms of routine and habit? What needs to improve on this side of things? Then the last thing that I want you to leave a comment on is your hex stone. Do you have a hex stone in your life right now that's causing you trouble? That's an obstacle that's stopping you from getting to where you need to go. Note that down. Let's make a conscious choice and make a plan this week to start removing and addressing the hex stones, to start implementing the keystones, and to start really actioning some of the things that you've taken away from this training. All right, chefs, it's a long one. It's an intense one. Much love. I hope you've enjoyed this, and I will catch you all very soon. Stay safe.